Hey everyone, it's Louisa. So a few days ago I was asked to talk about retrogrades and how they might affect mental health. And so I was looking at the different kinds of planets that we've got. So in this chat, I spoke about retrograde planets that are inner planets, i.e. Mercury, Venus and Mars. I also spoke about the outer planets when they're retrograde and how that might affect us. And also the role of Jupiter and Saturn in retrograde. They're kind of like our communication planets that bring sort of outer consciousness into our inner realm for us to understand. So talking a little bit about the trends of retrogrades. It's not a really extensive chat. For that, we could go on for days, really, but it's enough to whet the appetite and enough to give you some kind of intel on how to cope the current retrograde season. I was interviewed by the lovely Helen Nachintu on her amazing channel, which I think you should check out. I've put a link just below. So I'm going to leave you with the original interview for you to enjoy. And if you have any questions at all or want to touch base about it, then just drop me a line. It's louisa@feelgoodastrology.com. Bye for now.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This was supposed to be a Facebook Live on how the current retrograde of the planets at the moment is affecting our mental health. And I have to say, it certainly affected my mental health because, as I say, this was supposed to be a Facebook Live across Twitter and YouTube. But unfortunately, due to Mercury retrograding, we have had some issues, to say the least. Right. Without further ado, I actually just want to go ahead and ask Louisa Tanner Munson to introduce herself.
Thanks, Helen. And hello, everybody, if you're watching this. I'm Louisa Tanner Munson. I practice under the kind of handle Feel Good Astrology, and I consider myself to be an intuitive astrologer. So I approach astrology from a position of trying to help people connect into the story of who they are. And I think that's kind of how I work, really. When I look at a chart, I always try to crack the story wide open. So I see it as a map of a hero's journey. So that's my approach to astrology. But Helen's invited me to talk about retrogrades. So what was it you'd like me to talk about, Helen?
Well, I'm just looking around and talking to people, talking to friends and family members and some clients as well. I'm actually noticing a massive shift in people's behaviors and sort of behavior patterns. And I know that there's already a lot going on at the moment globally, which is kind of making everybody a little bit unhinged, shall we say. But on top of that, I am aware because, you know, I love following astrology. I like to know when planets are retrograding. And I know that at the moment, we're going through a very unusual time and period in time and space, should I say, where we have several planets retrograding. Now, often when Mercury is retrograding, people are a little bit sort of like, oh, you know, Mercury is retrograding. But I know it doesn't always have to mean that because Mercury is retrograding, everything has to be negative around us. And there are certain things that we can do in order to sort of minimize any kind of negative backlash from Mercury retrograde. Yeah. But, you know, the interesting thing for me at the moment is that there are several planets in retrograde. So what I really want to know is, how is that likely to impact us on a mental health perspective?
Well, it's a fantastic question. And to be able to answer that fully, I kind of need to unravel the whole idea of retrogrades, first of all. So,
yes, please.
What I'm seeing loads on social media at the moment is, oh my God, there's 6 planets retrograde, or there's 5 planets, or, you know, and this is unprecedented. And so lots of people are saying that right now. And I want to clear up, it's not unprecedented to have so many planets retrograde. But because that happens every year, we have Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Chiron, which is
sort of asteroid that I count as a planet because he has a big impact. But all of those go retrograde once a year for between 5 and 6 months. A couple of actually go retrograde for almost 7 months. So first of all, it's actually more likely that you're going to have lots of planets retrograde. But for the last few years, these retrogrades have really happened over the summer. And they've all sort of accumulated at the same time. Now, I also need to kind of make people aware of the difference between the planets. So Mercury, Venus and Mars are considered personal planets. So when they go retrograde, they tend to have a real knock-on personal effect to you and me and everyone that's listening and everyone in the world and stuff. And so we really feel it as almost like a personal triggering. But with the outer planets, and those I'm saying Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, they're almost an impersonal, they have an impersonal effect. So they're more generational and political. And when you have a combination of the outer planets and the personal planets triggering at the same time, you've got political stuff that really reaches you at a personal level. And I need to say that Jupiter and Saturn in the middle, and to some extent Chiron, they're neither personal nor generational. They're like bridging. And so with these guys currently both retrograde, they're bridging, they're bringing in the messages from the outer systems, the governments and stuff, but also our unconscious, you know, the Akashic records, our instincts, everything. They're bringing it in and translating it and making it mean something to us at a personal level. So right now, it feels like we're getting hammered. And whereas the outer planets all go retrograde once a year, Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, so that's quite common. We all hear about Mercury going retrograde. And thankfully, it's quite short because Mercury's only retrograde for about 3 weeks at a time. But Venus and Mars, when they go retrograde, Venus goes retrograde every 18, 19 months, so just over a year and a half. And then Mars goes retrograde every 26 months, so just over like 2 years, 2 months. And Venus goes retrograde for 40 days and Mars goes retrograde for about just 2.5 months. Mm-hmm. Now, it just so happens that in this year, their cycles are kind of lining up a little bit. So we are just coming out of Venus retrograde, which she hasn't been for 18 months. And then a month later or so, Mars also then goes retrograde for another 2 months. And we've also got Mercury in the mix as well. So it's like on a personal level, we're being touched really from the end of May when Venus went retrograde, right the way through almost to November. There is a slight gap, but it's intense. And this month in particular, we've had 6 planets retrograde just for 1 week. The rest of the time, 5 planets, but it's pretty intense. And it's going to be 6 planets in July. 5 planets in July, 6 for just 1 day when there's a day of overlap. And August, there's 6 from the 15th of August, which is it's a hard one because it's all the outer planets. So we've got no personal things to get a context with it on. And in September, it's also pretty intense between the 9th and the 12th of September with retrogrades. So that's a really quick sort of potted, what's going on. So we've got generational influences hitting us on a real sort of like personal basis, and you can kind of unpack it a lot further now if you want.
Wow. So right now, just to recap, how many planets are actually going retrograde right now as are recording this as of today, which is Friday the 26th of June?
As of today, we have got Mercury. Venus stopped being retrograde yesterday. So Venus no more. So it's Mercury, then it's Jupiter, Saturn, not Uranus just yet. Uranus is next month, I think. Hang on, let me just. I had it all in front of me, and I all my applications. So it's Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto. Yeah, Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto. Yeah. So Mercury, our communication. That's our personal. It's about our thinking patterns and our communications and how we deliver information or goods and services from A to B. So it represents travel or mail and things like that, and that can get disrupted. Then Jupiter is very much about how we feel authority in ourselves and how we can grow and expand. And so that is we're feeling a little bit crushed, we're feeling a little frustrated in finding the authority in ourselves, like almost like we don't have authority. And
yeah,
then
so that's
go on.
That's a very good point to make, which is one of the reasons why I felt that it was really important to discuss this, because people are already feeling just, a little bit disheveled, to say the least, with everything going on at the moment. And then to add in all these retrogrades, there's almost like people are in a state of confusion. I'm hearing people saying, well, I don't know what to do. I feel like I should be doing something. What is it that I should be doing? Is that to do with what's going on with the planets retrograding at the moment, would you say?
There's something else that I think needs to be sort of added into the mix. It's not just about the retrogrades, because like I said, there are times every year when you might have 5 or 6 planets retrograde. But Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto are all within 5 degrees of each other at the moment in the sign of Capricorn. I mean, Saturn's technically almost in Capricorn. He's just retrograding back out of Aquarius, but they're within a really small, if you think there's 360 degrees in circle, right now, Pluto, the planet of transformation, death, disaster, control, like major control, narcissism, gaslighting, all those kinds of horrible words that bring about our salvation and resurrection eventually, but put a really difficult learning curve. So there's Pluto, the Saturn that's about limits, discipline, fear and challenge, and also financial challenge, and imprisonment, feeling confined. And then there's Jupiter about us feeling sovereign in ourselves, but also the authority out there are maybe overstepping. So we've got these 3 heavyweights all in the same part of the sky. And the last time these 3 were all together was thousands of years ago. I mean, we're talking like, I think 1500 years before Christ was born,
Wow.
Trying to keep this for everybody and everyone's belief systems. It's a really, really long time ago that these 3 were together in the sign of Capricorn. And when they were, it was the start, it marked the start of the Babylonian era. And now they're back together again. And it's quite possible that we're coming out of what was created then. It's almost like, is it the end of the Babylonian era? Is it a restart of it in a new way? Who knows? But issues of setting up a civilization are really, really in the consciousness at the moment. And they're going retrograde. And, people are sore. They've been locked up for ages.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It is. I am hearing a lot of people saying, it's really tough. I mean, there are also a lot of people losing jobs at the moment, which is really tough all round. But in terms of, because we were talking earlier and we were saying that usually when Mercury goes retrograde, the first thing that people do is kind of like panic because it's going retrograde, and they feel like everything from there on is going to, shall we say, go downhill or be really negative until Mercury comes out of the retrograde. What would you say to the people that are actually panicking over the retrograde in a negative way?
I would say that right now this is the time to go within. We've got to use a phrase that I'm hearing quite a lot, we've got to understand what's going on, not understand, we've got to understand what's going on.
I like that.
It's good, isn't it? I wish I could say it was mine. I'd love to say it was mine, it's not. But when Mercury's about thought processes, and I always think that, yes, it can go wrong and technology can go wrong and this, that and the other. And I think we need to go within, and when we're doing anything technical or involved in communicating, signing letters, documents, doing anything, that could go really awful, then we need to allow for more time. Don't stress yourself up. Don't book things back to back. Allow yourself lots of time and lots of contingency. because the real gift of Mercury retrograde is to sit in it and reimagine your future.
Yeah.
Imagine. It's brilliant for collaborations, co-creation. It's really quite magical. And it's about reprogramming your mind as well if you want to. So use the energy of it to rethink what you've done, review, any word with re in, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
It's about revealing a new personality for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I agree with that. And it's interesting that you should say that, you know, everything that begins with re, because that's exactly what I've been doing, where I've been at, you know, just reviewing everything that I have been doing. Like, for instance, I'm reviewing the time that I am spending working, and, you know, how much time I'm putting into work, and is that exhausting me? Am I allowing, you know, space for new things to come into alignment with me? And I was just saying to you earlier, you know, I've been doing back-to-back lives for a few weeks now, and I just feel that with Mercury retrograding, I actually just need to just relax and recuperate and review what I'm doing in preparation for new things that are coming on board. And also the other day, somebody was talking to me about a contract that had fallen through for them. And I stood up and I just clapped my hands and then looked at me like I was really strange. And I said, you know, I am so happy for you that you didn't actually get that contract, because, you know, we are in Mercury retrograde. And I feel that if you had signed that contract during the retrograde, then that would have been one of your most troublesome contracts, because we had this conversation before, and they had actually previously signed a contract during a retrograde, and it did become one of their most problematic clients, because when I kept wondering why this client was really problematic for them. And I said to them, okay, do you remember, can you recall the date on which you actually signed that contract? And when we looked back at the date, the contract was signed during a retrograde. So, yeah, so I said, you know, there you go. It's really not a coincidence. And obviously, personally, I've also been experiencing challenges with technology. Just before we actually started this recording, which should have been live, we had a lot of issues with technology, and everything I was trying just wasn't happening, and obviously just doesn't want to go live for whatever reason. And rather than get annoyed about that, the easiest thing you could do is just sit back and say, well, you know, what's the alternative?
It's funny because I was supposed to be doing an interview with another astrologer, one who has inspired me in my work.
Yeah.
I'd been chatting with him on and off for like a few, I think 2 years via email. You know, can I interview? And he was like, yeah. And the night before, he said, oh, here's my telephone number. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, you have to call me. I haven't got an internet connection. And I don't know why he was sending me these emails. And I said, have you got a smartphone? And he said, no, I've got a landline. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, but I'm using this technology. And I went through all the different scenarios. And I think we can do it via Skype, but I need to really think about it. So I couldn't just dive right into it because I didn't have the time to research it. But I think also, as this is going on with technology and social media and all these great advancements, but also I think people's relationships to those technologies are also changing, because a lot of people are going offline now as well. So when I've agreed to do interviews with people, in the meantime, they've decided that they want to go offline, or they actually are offline and didn't tell me. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it can be a little bit of a mare, because a lot of people are shying away from things like Facebook at the moment, because there's quite a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? There's an interesting energy on Facebook. You know, people seem to be really, really divided in their thoughts. You know, they're either here or there, and if you're not with them, that seems to be an issue as well on a personal level. Yeah, it's a very intense energy at the moment. Is there anything else that we really need to be aware of in terms of what's going on at the moment with the planets?
Yeah. Yeah, with like the idea of inner standing, like Pluto's about transformation and power and control. And so right now there's a very strong Pluto theme. Anyone that's got a very strong Scorpio chart, so for instance, a Scorpio ascendant, a Scorpio moon, a Scorpio sun, the chances are when Pluto goes retrograde, you're going to feel it a lot more. If you already know your chart and you know that you've got a difficult aspect between Pluto and another planet, or if your Pluto is retrograde in your chart, then the issues of control are even more triggering for you right now. So
Wow.
what I would do is kind of encourage people, if they're worried, to actually research their own charts and go through a series of questions, which I could write in I'll write them up in a small blog piece and post into the comments field of the sharing of this.
Brilliant. Thank you.
But there's a series of questions you can ask yourself. And so finding out what your ruling planet in your chart is will enable you to know if you're going to get messed around. So the outer planets rule Scorpio, Aquarius, and Pisces. If you've got loads of that in your chart, this is a time when you are probably going to feel kind of confused and have triggering rising up. And it's all very unconscious because these the outer planets bringing in messages from afar, you know, like stuff that's not personal, it's transpersonal, it's for the future of us, and we're trying to process it as best we can. And you're talking about the polarity of people. I'm seeing that as the great divide that exists within us. I know we're all being forced to pick a side.
Yeah. And it's exhausting.
It's really exhausting, because like when you pick a side, like sometimes you realize that one side might represent your mum's views and one represents your dad's views, or the school that you grew up in versus, you know, and we're always being polarized right from birth. And I think given the intensity of Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn, and also Pallas Athena, which I haven't mentioned, she's a little asteroid, she's also retrograde at the same point, and she's about thinking patterns.
Wow.
You have to observe thinking patterns. Right now we are observing our own patterns about authority, sovereignty, control, where control goes too far. Abuse is a really big thing. And we've got to work that out inside. And we've got to work out how we can reconcile both sides of us, both sides of the polarity inside us. I don't think we can do it outside. I mean, we can try outside of ourselves to resolve it. And you're just going to find yourself in more Facebook altercations and things. So I think it's a time to go inside and understand that we are probably all sides.
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling it's time to be inner standing rather than understanding. I am definitely going within for the whole of next week. Speaking of myself, actually, very selfishly, and on behalf of many other Leos out there, I want to ask, I'd like to ask a specific question of how this interesting period is likely to affect Leos.
Well, that's a really cool question. I think the knock-on effect will really happen when Mars goes retrograde. Now, Mars, when he goes retrograde, every 2 years he goes retrograde, he's going retrograde in masculine or positive signs of the zodiac. So all the fire signs and all the air signs.
Okay.
So in this retrograde period, that he's going retrograde in September, he's going retrograde in the sign of Aries. So as he goes into Aries, which he's pretty much going into Aries right now, he's going to make a trine to your sun and any other planets you might have around. Because a lot of you might have like Mercury or Venus nearby where your sun is. So it's possible that your sun and your Mercury and your Venus could all be in the sign of Leo at various degrees. So when Mars is approaching the trine, the useful energy, it should boost your energy levels to succeed and get out there and feel really, really positive. Then from the 9th of September, when it goes retrograde, your energy levels are likely to go and you'll feel a bit blocked. So progress.
Did you
like
say from
May,
September? From September?
September the 9th or 11th, I think.
Yeah, because I recall, by the way, for those of you who don't already know, Louisa is actually my personal astrologist. And so I get daily, not daily, sorry, I get monthly updates, and which enable me to actually gain an awareness of what's likely to happen sort of a month in advance, so I can better prepare myself for it. And one of the interesting things that came out of my reading for my month ahead with Louisa was that around about mid-September, it's something that I won't forget in a hurry, because that really stood out for me. I was like, bing, okay, yeah, noted. So what Louisa mentioned in my reading was that around mid-September to let's say around mid-November,
right.
it should really be a period of just rest and reflection instead of like doing, because you were saying, and I'll actually I'll just hand it over to you just to explain that bit.
I think for everyone actually between September and like mid-September and mid-November, it's a time to kind of pull back and harness our energy in, because it's a time when we're likely to bleed energy. You know, we're just going to expend it if we're not careful with it. So it's a really good time to go in and nurture ourselves, look after ourselves. It's almost worth doing that on the lead up to it. So as you go into it, you're already like got banks of energy, you know, you've got all your vitamins and minerals all topped up and you feel refreshed. And then I would spend those 2 months thinking about where you want to be and start planning, strategically planning on actions that you can take, because Mars is very much about actions, and it's very much about moving in a definite direction and committing to things. He's really determined. So think about some really big goals that might stretch you, and just plan them and imagine doing them whilst you're also relaxed. I wouldn't push ahead in this time in actually starting things, because I would imagine that if you start them, you'll have to take a few steps back. So I would wait until mid-November. And in fact, don't be in a rush to actualize it, because the next thing I wanted to mention to you, Helen, especially being Leo, is the next interesting time is actually from the solstice, I think, and then just after the new year. So around that time, things are going to start changing, because like Jupiter and Saturn are moving out of Capricorn and into the sign of Aquarius, which is your opposite sign. Mm-hmm. And when Jupiter and Saturn move into Aquarius, we are leaving behind some of the corporatocracy. We're leaving behind some of the ideas of globalism. It could get technical, so it could be Chip City. I'm hoping not. It could be a massive push ahead.
We are all hoping it's not going to be that.
So it could get very technical very quickly, but I also see it as a time of futurism in a positive way, in a flat hierarchical sense. Because Aquarius really carries the ideals of freedom, personal freedom, and being independent to make your own moves. And so I see it as a time when people can start moving. And then, so it moves into Aquarius on Saturn on the 17th of December, Jupiter on the 19th. But then from the 3rd of January, 2021, Jupiter, Saturn and Mars are all properly out of their retrograde area, and they're really powering forwards. So I would even say, if you've got your brilliant plans of stepping forward into your future, I would almost wait until January, the first week of January, and then start really moving. Because in January, I don't think there is anything retrograde. I think just the tail end of Chiron and possibly Neptune.
Yeah.
So, and at the moment, for the last few years, definitely, January and February have been the time for motoring forwards with things, because the summer's got sticky with all these retrogrades. So I would plan. It's kind of like plan your year via the school timetable. Like people in France and Portugal and Germany and stuff, they're off from like mid-June until September. That's the main retrograde moment at the moment. So plan your life like a Central European person, and just have a 3-month holiday, and then, you know, put most of your effort into January, February, March.
Wow. You know, it's really interesting also. It's really interesting also that you know, sort of mid mid September to mid November, we should really just be you know, kind of resting and not really starting anything new, because I actually feel like the energy is going to be quite dense around about that time, because of everything that's happening globally. And then we've got the American elections.
To elections.
So, you know, for want of a better word, and to use one of your favorite words, I see you using it a lot.
Is it the
going
one
to
with
be a
the QSs?
shitstorm.
Yes, and you're right. Like Mars, you know, it's about determination and stuff. It's also about artiness. It's about people falling out and having a scrap and being really sort of using their aggression and not being able to control it. So I do think tempers are also going to really get frayed and fried during this time. And Mars is also in his own sign. Like Mars rules the sign of Aries. So Mars is going retrograde in his own sign. He's at full power.
Yeah.
Full Aries. Like Aries is the kind of strongest fire sign. It's the most pushy fire sign. It's the one that wants to have its needs met. Like, and I'm not saying this about Aries necessarily. Like you and I are both fire signs. So there's Aries.
Yeah.
There's lovely warm Leos ruled by the sun, and I'm the Jupiter kind of airhead fire sign of Sagittarius. And the Aries is like, go get them. Don't waste much time to like hang around and chat. You know, they want to full steam ahead. And so you've got Mars in his own sign going retrograde. It's a recipe for sort of aggression and more riots. I think it's going to get really eggy.
So it's yet another time for many of us to actually, especially those of us who are quite energetically sensitive, to actually just go within, not get too entangled into what is going on, and become more of an observer than somebody that just wants to kind of just jump in and get involved. Because I'm actually feeling, as I'm saying that, there's going to be a lot of backlash from people that are jumping in, unless you've got a really, really thick skin, like I think I do. You know, unless you've got a really, really thick skin, I would say, you know, not to jump into certain things too quickly when you see things on social media or see things that are going on in the news. And I do feel, again, that there's going to be a lot of upheaval around about that time, and we're likely to see some really horrible things and hear some really horrible things. I'm feeling like, oh, I'm getting goosebumps, but I'm feeling like there's a lot that is going to come to the surface during that period of time that could be really
really disturbing.
That could be really disturbing to our psyche, and impact our mental health. And as you mentioned earlier, it really is, I feel, a time to go inwards, a time to prepare ourselves mentally and make sure that our immune system is boosted, so that, because again, you know, when your immune system is low and you're not getting the right minerals and nourishment and vitamins and eating the right foods, then your brain is much more likely to be impacted a lot quicker. You're much more likely to become reactionary to things, rather than, you know, you'll be slow to anger, is what I'm trying to say here, rather than just jumping in with 2 feet and like all sorts of opinions going on. So yeah, that's going to be a really, really interesting time for many of us. One other thing, and I usually do this because from a very personal, selfish perspective, but also for all the Pisces out there.
Yeah.
How? Because as you know, I literally am surrounded by Pisces in my household. Jeff is a Pisces, Olivia's a Pisces. A lot of my friends, close friends, are Pisces, which kind of makes the relationship very interesting there. Because Pisces and Leos, Pisces are very challenging for Leos, as I have found out, and I can only speak for myself. I don't know whether that's how it is on a bigger scale, but putting that to one side, how is all of this impacting or likely to impact the Pisces?
Well, bless them. I've got a lot of friends for Pisces. I'm surrounded by a lot of Pisces, and
It must be a Leo thing.
I've got loads of Pisces in my own chart, and so's my husband, and 2 of our kids have as well. And my mum's actually a Pisces with Leo moon. So while you were talking about that, I was thinking about my mum and what a struggle it is for her sometimes to kind of manage both parts of her personality and kind of integrate them. They do appear to be quite different energies, but one of the things that I think both signs have got is these massive hearts. They've both got a real capacity. Like Pisces have got a really big capacity to love, and they're ruled by Neptune. So these are one of the star signs that I said watch out for with these retrogrades, because when Neptune goes retrograde, that's their ruling planet. And Neptune is about our urge to merge and our need to lose ourselves. So when things get tough for Pisces, they need to lose themselves somehow so that they can forget who they are.
Just remind me again, when is Neptune going retrograde?
It's already retrograde. Hang on. It's gone retrograde this month. Let me just check in my charts. It went retrograde on the 22nd.
Okay.
And it's going to be there for a long time.
Do I need to take cover?
No. I just think Pisces tend to not be sure about what is theirs and what's yours. Anyone with a really strong Pisces, they feel everything, or they tend to feel everything. So they've got to filter a vast amount of information, and it all gets processed in a very personal way. So it's very difficult to give feedback to a Pisces without them taking it personally. It can feel like an attack. So I think they need a lot of space and support to be themselves. I feel really sorry for Pisces at the moment, because a lot of my clients right now are either people with a lot in Capricorn or a lot in Pisces, and I put that down to the fact that Neptune is already in Pisces, and it's been there for ages, and it's going to be there for another few years. And Neptune is really a difficult planet, and it's in the sign of no boundaries and over emotionalism. So you've got this unboundaried, spiritual, intuitive planet about losing ourselves and how can we cope with life without, like, you know, if you want to lose yourself in a spiritual way, you might transcend, you might be awakened, you might sing and feel your heart burst with joy, you might feel so at one in nature, and that's great. But if you don't have that, or if your life is already under par, or you haven't found yourself, or you don't want to find yourself, then the urge for the Neptune energy is to lose yourself. And how do you lose your identity if you can't transcend it in a positive way? You do drugs, drink, you watch endless box sets of Netflix back to back, so you become the story and you forget who you are. So I really feel for Pisces, because they have this need to forget who they are and kind of identify with everyone else.
Wow.
Grass is greener. It's really hard for them. They feel everything, and so now they need to hide and get as peaceful as possible.
I was about to ask, so what sort of guidance would you give a Piscean who is feeling all of this heavy, sort of dense energy, I suppose?
Breathe. Start with breath, absolutely, because it just gets you in your body. They need to do things to get in their body, not to get out of their body. And they need to recognize who they are as a person. So it's fine for them to be creative, but they need to own that creativity. It's very easy for them to kind of lose themselves and merge. So I would do everything that I can to feel in my body and to personalize it. Even though I was saying, you know, like when you have rows and things with a Piscean, they'll feel attacked. They take it personally. But it's important that they connect with their body.
Yeah.
Like Pisces is ruled by the feet, or not by the feet, sorry. The foot is the part of the body assigned to Pisces, which is interesting because they're some of the most ungrounded people. So they need to absolutely take their shoes off and connect their feet to the ground.
Right. Okay.
Outside, listen to the birds, breathe. And if they find water soothing, go do it. But
I'm taking all these notes.
I really recommend clean eating for them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
They, out of all the signs, they're the most likely, in my experience, to have allergies to like foods and pesticides.
So you're giving me, without knowing it, you're giving me a lot of tips in how to better look after Jeff. And when he comes home today, I'm going to say, take your shoes off and go walk outside on bare feet. And,
Yes.
you know, obviously being into natural health and wellness, I do my level best to cook fresh every day, you know, as much as I possibly can. So I'm about to ramp that one up as well. So, and, you know, getting him to breathe. Actually, I should get him to do some meditation with me and get him into that. He already loves the flow of water and the sound of water. Yeah, being a Pisces, I suppose he's going to love that anyway.
My absolute last tip would be, if you're happy with that, because not everyone likes feet, but Carl and I, we hold each other's feet and we just sit and talk, and like it's the moment where we touch each other's feet or we give it a little massage. It's kind of grounding you into your body, and it opens you up. So holding their feet, as well as grounding outside, but holding their feet and giving them a little massage.
Oh, that's a really interesting one.
If everyone likes their feet touched, you know, some people are a bit funny about it, but if you can stand it, then definitely.
Wow, fascinating. Thank you so much for actually coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom, as usual. I found this particular segment quite insightful. It's answered a lot of the questions that I had in terms of, you know, the behavior that I'm seeing by people around me. And now, especially more so with the Pisceans, after that little conversation that we've just had, you know, there's a lot of things that's been going on in my world that now has just suddenly made sense. And, you know, you have a fantastic way of actually doing that. It's just explaining things so they just, you know, they just, you instantly connect with them and they instantly make sense. And I love how you do that.
Thank you. You know, it's like, you know, when I introduce myself, it's how I think of astrology. It's about stories, and everyone's got a story, and we all need to be a hero in our own stories. And so I just look for that angle, and that's, so thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Do you actually have any final words before we close out on the show?
Oh, good question. I think we're being pulled apart at the seams right now, cosmically, spiritually, and I think what appears to be real doesn't necessarily appear to be real. You know, I think there's maybe a long con job. You know, like it's very much Truman Show. I think we're in a kind of a Truman Show Matrix style mashup where nobody really knows what's going on. And so I think when we're in that place, the only thing we can do is know ourselves. And when I'm not sure what to do, or my husband's not, we sit there and we say, what would feel good right now? And so we narrow our choices down to what would feel good and put us in the best feeling place. And I think if you start from there, no matter what's going on in your birth chart, you know, you will be drawing in the best kind of energetics to continue to feel good. So I just think, go within, try and stay out. You know, if you like popcorn, make some non-GMO. Back and observe. You said this is the time to observe in the much of the craziness, but you know, we all need to stay calm. And if I can be of any help, then people can reach me. Is it right to plug my website?
Absolutely.
So I'm very happy for you to, if you need to connect out and want some cosmic guidance, then just reach out. It's Louisa@feelgoodastrology.com.
Hence, you know, Louisa is advising you or guiding you towards doing anything that makes you feel good, because it's all about feel good astrology. I like that. It's really cool. I love it. And I love that little feel good tip that you just gave at the end. It's, you know, because very often we forget to just step outside of what's going on and think, you know what, I actually have a choice. Just because my birth chart is saying that this, that, and that might be going on right now, that doesn't have to be my reality. I do have a choice in all of this. So I can look at what's going on and think, well, I don't particularly like the sound of that, so this is what I'm going to do in order to combat it, you know. Yeah, I love that. I love that tip that you just gave.
And sometimes neither choice looks that good, but always one choice will be slightly better. And, you know, not everyone has the same good choices ahead of them. We'll have different things going on for us, but yeah, pick the thing that's going to make you feel better and get you in the feel better place, feel good, and take it from there, one step at a time.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
I know you are super busy at the moment. You're in the middle of lots of things going on and stuff, and restructuring during the retrograde.
Yes, absolutely.
So you know, it's really an honor to have you on the show and have you share your wisdom with our audience today. And yeah, you know, anybody that's watching right now that needs some guidance in terms of what's going on in their lives, and if you want to get a great idea of what's going on for the month ahead for you so you can better prepare for it, then Louisa is the person that I would say you can go to. Yes, I know I'm being biased, but
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for today, Louisa, and it would be a pleasure to have you on another time, discussing another subject depending on what's going on. And I actually get the impression that we are going to be having quite a few discussions in the next few weeks and months with regards to everything that's going on at the moment. It's always good to bring you on board and give people a different perspective as to what is going on.
Oh. So I hope you found that useful. I certainly did. It's always really useful to have a good old chin wag about retrogrades and understanding their impact and how you know, how that influences the trends that's going on in the world and stuff like that. Anyway, I think I've had your attention for long enough now. If there's anything I can do to help you unpack retrogrades in your own birth charts, or the impact of upcoming retrogrades and how that might affect your life, then obviously if you just need some cosmic advice, just drop me a line. It's louisa@feelgoodastrology.com, and I'll be really delighted to help you through that. Anyway, take care. Thanks once again for watching. Bye for now.